part 3 of the Passé composé. So in Passé composé 1, the first video, you learned how to form the Passé composé. You first have your personal pronoun, je, tu, il, elle, nous, vous, il, elle. And then you learned that you have an auxiliary verb, which is avoir, conjugated, and then you have a past participle. In Passé composé 2, we had a video called Passé composé 2, you learned irregular past participles. And we learned that the irregular past participles you are most likely to get wrong are avoir, être, and prendre. And those are eu, été, and pris. So, before we jump in, remember this, the 3 parts: noun or pronoun, auxiliary verb, and past participle. Okay, and we remember you learned that the auxiliary verb is avoir conjugated. Okay, guess what? I'm really sorry to be the one to tell you this, but sometimes the auxiliary verb is not avoir. Sometimes the auxiliary verb is être. What? Okay. Oh my God, no. Why? Okay, there's no good answer. Okay, so it's just messy. You got to roll up your sleeves and deal with it. So if you really want to know the answer, you could pause and look here, but nobody even agrees that it's an answer. So basically what you need to do is memorize which verbs take être as the auxiliary verb. And we call them être verbs. But first, can you conjugate être? Do it. Okay, come on, press pause and do it. Conjugate être. And this is what it looks like. Je suis, tu es, il est, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont, elles, spelled wrong, elles sont. So, how do you know which verbs take être? Which one? Does it take avoir? Does it take être? You have to memorize it, and there are 2 ways to remember them, 2 ways to memorize them, because it's not logical. It's pure memorization. You can use the maison d'être, which is the way I like to do it, or you can do Dr. Mrs. Vandertramp. Not my favorite thing, but I'll show you that one too. So, the maison d'être is a visual tool to help you memorize which verbs go in it. And I will give you copies of this paper, and I'll give you copies of different ones as well. We have different looking houses. And if you Google maison d'être, you'll see all sorts of lovely things. So the verbs in the maison d'être in English are, imagine going in a front door of a house. To arrive, to come, to go in, to enter. And imagine exiting that door. To leave, to go out. Then you go up and down stairs. To go up, to go down. To be born and to stay. Imagine the baby's born, so you're a stay-at-home parent. To fall, to die. And when you die, you become something, an angel, a vampire? Hard to know. Okay, so let's look at them in French. Arriver, venir, entrer, rentrer. Partir, aller, sortir. Monter, descendre. Naître, rester. Tomber, mourir, devenir. All right. So let's look at them now with their meanings. And you can write these down. Sorry, not with their meanings, with their past participles. So we have arriver, arrivé, venir, venu, entrer, entré, rentrer, rentré, partir, parti, aller, aller, sortir, sorti, monter, monter, descendre, descendu, naître, né, rester, resté. Start at the top. Devenir, devenu, tomber, tombé, mourir, mort. Can you tell which of these is irregular? And now something else to show you. Look at these verbs over here. We have arriver, venir, entrer, rentrer. What happened? Do you see we have entrer and rentrer? And we have arriver, and we have venir and revenir. if we put re in front of some verbs, it just means to have it happen again. Venir is to come. Revenir is to come back. Come again, come back. So let's look at these. Repartir is to leave again. Ressortir is to go out again. Now, look at what I have underlined. I've got revenir, and I should have venir, but it's not there, and devenir. So venir, devenir, and revenir, they all have venir in them, right? So you can imagine venir, the past participle is venu, devenir is devenu, revenir is revenu. So we have learned that the verbs in the maison d'être, or verbs that follow the Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp way of memorizing, you haven't seen it yet, they take être as the auxiliary verb. You've already seen that. That is Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp. It's just a made-up name that contains all of those verbs. That's another good way to memorize them if you prefer that. There's also a song. I'll try to find you lots of songs, but there's one popular one. So it's pretty simple, right? Ha 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 ha. That was a joke. I understand this is all complicated. It's like algebra though. Memorize a few rules. Okay, so now change the following sentences from the present to the passé composé. You should hit pause and do it and then check. Pause. Okay, il est monté. Il est descendu. Carlyle est devenu vampire. Leon Sandcastle est tombé. Okay, but there's one more thing. I'm really sorry, but this is the truth. Look how small her feet are compared to Ken's. Ken has normal sized feet. Barbie has, if the wind blows too hard, she's going to fall over feet. When it's feminine, you add an E to the past participle. That's crazy, but it's true, and you'll get used to it. When it's plural, you add an S to the past participle. When it's feminine plural, you add ES to the past participle. If there's one feminine person or noun, you add E. Okay, we've already seen that. We're just going over it again. If it's plural, you add S. If it's plural and everything or everyone is feminine, you add ES. If it's plural but at least one noun or person is masculine, you just add an S. You don't add the feminine thing. So write that down. When it's feminine, add E. When it's plural, add S. When it's feminine plural, add ES. Pause it and make sure you write it. Okay, now let's look at some examples. So what we call that is agreement in number and gender. So here, the agreement in number and gender is it's plural, so you add an S, and it's all females, so you add an E. And here it's plural, so you add an S, right? That's what we mean when we say agreement in number and gender. So if you look at il monte, and we just wrote il est monté, it's singular and it's masculine, so we don't add anything. If we look at elle monte, it's singular, so we don't add an S, but it's feminine, so we add an E. Il monte, notice that this, the first il monte sounds exactly like that il monte. All right, ils sont montés. So you see we conjugated être for il, and il is masculine, so we don't add an E, but it's plural, so we added an S. Pierre arrive, Pierre est arrivé. Anne arrive, Anne est arrivée. It's feminine, singular, so we add an E. Pierre et Anne arrivent. It's plural, but it's not both feminine, so we just add an S. Pierre et Anne sont arrivés. Anne et Isa arrivent. Anne et Isa sont arrivés. We had to add an E because they're both feminine and an S. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but adding that E and the S does not affect the way we pronounce them. You cannot hear that E or the S. Elle est montée, il est monté. What you can hear is, if I were to say for Pierre and Anne, if I said il, I-L-S, I would say ils sont arrivés, You can't hear it in the word arriver. And then Anne et Isa sont arrivés. You can't hear it. That's the end of part 3. Thank you for listening.